Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into something pretty controversial?
Oh, yeah. I think this one's going to be interesting.
We're tackling the 4B movement today.
For 4Bs.
Yeah, you know, uh, women basically saying nope to men,
No dating.
no dating, no marriage,
No sex.
no having kid.
Until things get a whole lot more equal.
Exactly, it's like they're drawing a line in the sand,
And it's definitely gaining traction.
especially since Trump got reelected.
Seems like that really pushed things over the edge for some people.
So we're going to be looking at this BuzzFeed article where they interviewed 16 guys.
16 guys, yeah, about their reactions to this whole 4B thing.
And let me tell you, their reactions are all over the place.
It's not just a simple for or against kind of deal.
Nope, not at all. Some guys are like totally gung-ho for it.
Yeah, they see it as a necessary wake-up call for men.
Like this one guy who said something like, women are clearly disenfranchised.
And men need to take a long, hard look in the mirror.
At how we've contributed to the problem.
And some guys are walking the walk, too.
Oh, yeah. Like what? There's this one guy who's decided to live a sex-free life.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, partly in solidarity with the movement.
That's dedication.
And partly to avoid, like, even the possibility of exploiting women.
Okay, so you've got the diehards, then there's the guys who are like, well,
Yeah.
Zach's hesitant.
They support the goals, but
They're not so sure about the methods.
like this one guy who thinks it's a little manipulative.
Kind of like holding men hostage emotionally
And he thinks guys who call themselves allies should be stepping up in more concrete ways.
instead of just, talking the talk.
Then there's this other perspective that I found super interesting.
What's that?
This guy says women should just be more picky about who they date.
Instead of like this blanket ban on all men.
Right. It's like he's saying just choose better partners.
But is it really that easy?
I mean, come on, that seems to put all the responsibility on women.
Like it's their job to fix the problem.
Exactly. It ignores all the societal forces that shape how we relate to each other. It's like telling someone in a polluted city to just breathe cleaner air.
But where are they going to find that clean air?
Right. It's not that simple.
Okay, so we've got the supporters, the maybe supporters, and now we get to
The skeptics.
the guys who are like, nah, this is not going to work.
Some think it's just a fad that'll fizzle out.
Others are worried about what it means in the long run.
Like one guy who's concerned that women will lose political power.
If they don't have kids.
Exactly. No future generations to carry on their values.
That's a good point. It's like, you can opt out now, but what about the future?
Who's going to fight for your rights then?
And then we get to the guys who think the 4B movement is actually harmful.
Yeah, not just ineffective, but downright bad.
Like this one who's worried it's just a knee-jerk reaction to the political climate.
And it'll end up hurting society as a whole.
Kind of a cutting off your nose to spite your face situation.
Then there's this other guy who goes even further.
Oh, boy.
He thinks the whole movement is fueled by man hate, and it'll just push young men toward figures like Trump.
Who prey on that feeling of alienation.
Exactly. It's like he's saying if you demonize all men.
You're just going to make things worse.
And then there's this comparison to the movie Idiocracy.
Idiocracy.
Yeah, you know how in that film, the less intelligent people have more kids?
And eventually outnumber everyone else.
This guy sees a similar thing happening with the 4B movement.
So he's saying that women who opt out are basically giving up on the future.
Pretty bleak outlook, huh?
Yeah, kind of a scary thought.
But it shows just how much anxiety there is around this whole thing.
And it's not just about relationships. It's tied to these bigger societal trends.
The manosphere, for example.
Okay, for those of us who don't spend all day online, what is that exactly?
Basically, it's this network of online communities.
Where men are pushing back against what they see as feminist extremism.
They feel like men are being unfairly demonized,
Blamed for everything.
and women are portrayed as perpetual victims.
So how does the 4B movement fit into all of this?
Well, there's this one guy who sees it as a reaction to men already checking out.
Checking out of what?
Relationships. He says women have spent years telling men they're dangerous and useless,
So men just walked away.
and now women are surprised that men aren't around.
It's like he's saying, you created this problem and now you're complaining about it.
Exactly. And this whole idea of male grievance.
It comes up a lot in the manosphere.
There's this feeling that men's issues are being ignored.
And that's what led to Trump's election.
So yeah, it's all connected.
This is getting deep. We're seeing how personal relationships,
We're tied to these bigger political trends
it's like the 4B movement is tapping into this deep well of anxiety.
about power, gender roles, and the future of society.
Definitely a conversation that's much bigger than any one movement or article.
And it's a conversation we need to be having.
Yeah.
So let's pick up on this thread in part 2.
Picking up where we left off, it's like some guys see this 4B movement as proof that women have just gone too far.
Yeah, this whole manosphere perspective, it's like they're saying, see, we told you,
It's important to understand that point of view, though, right?
even if it makes us uncomfortable.
Totally, because it shows how some men are feeling.
This sense of disillusionment and resentment.
Like this one guy in the article who said, women have spent years telling men they're dangerous.
Predatory.
Basically unnecessary.
And now they're surprised that men are withdrawing from relationships.
But isn't that a little simplistic? To blame it all on women?
I mean, it's a pretty big leap to say that dating norms caused Trump to get elected.
Right. There's got to be more to it than that.
What's more likely is that both the manosphere and figures like Trump
They're tapping into this deeper anxiety.
about power dynamics, gender roles, the future.
Like everything's uncertain and people are grasping for answers.
Exactly. It's not just cause and effect.
It's more like the shared underlying current of discontent.
The 4B movement and the manosphere.
They're both symptoms of this bigger societal shift.
Expressions of fear, frustration, a need for control.
Okay, so we've talked about the negative reactions, but
There's also a lot of positive energy around the 4B movement.
guys who are genuinely excited about it.
Seeing it as a force for good.
Like this one guy who framed it as a matter of bodily autonomy.
He said women don't owe men anything,
They should be able to do whatever they want with their bodies and their lives.
without having to justify it to anyone.
That's so powerful. It's about time we recognize that women's choices are their own.
Another guy saw the movement as a way to expose the dehumanization of women.
And start a conversation about how we treat women in society.
Like he's saying, this discomfort you're feeling, that's progress in action.
He sees the 4B movement as a catalyst for change.
A way to shake things up and force us to face the facts.
So even within the group of supporters, there are different levels of engagement.
Some focused on individual empowerment, others on societal transformation.
It's like this movement is a prism showing different facets of the issue.
And amidst all this intellectual debate, let's not forget the human element.
We heard some really personal stories, too.
Like the guy who's chosen to live a life without sex or romantic relationships.
Oh, really?
He said it's partly in solidarity with the 4B movement.
But also because he wants to examine his own motivations.
Make sure he's not perpetuating harmful patterns.
That's amazing. It shows that this isn't just about what women are doing.
It's also about how men are choosing to respond.
He's using the 4B movement as an opportunity for some serious soul searching.
Asking himself, what role do I play in this? How can I be part of the solution?
That's a question we could all ask ourselves honestly.
Regardless of how we feel about the 4B movement.
Self-reflection is never a bad thing.
This deep dive has been quite a journey.
We've gone from anger and resentment
To hope and solidarity.
and everything in between.
It's like we've been on a crash course in gender dynamics.
Power, struggles, the anxieties that drive modern relationships.
It's been fascinating and honestly a bit exhausting.
But that's what makes it valuable, right?
We're not shying away from the tough stuff.
We're embracing the messiness because that's where the real growth happens.
So we've explored a whole spectrum of opinions.
Supporters, skeptics, hardcore opponents.
But what does it all mean?
Is this just a trend or is it something bigger?
Could it actually change the way men and women relate to each other?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And like most things in life,
The answer is probably somewhere in the gray area.
it's unlikely to change everything overnight.
But it's also naive to think it won't have any lasting impact.
Even if it stays a niche movement
It's already started conversations that needed to happen.
about gender inequality and power dynamics.
Okay, let's play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay.
What if the 4B movement keeps growing?
What could happen?
Well, one possibility is that it creates an even bigger divide between men and women.
If enough women opt out of traditional relationships,
It could lead to more isolation and resentment.
on both sides,
Imagine men feeling attacked by the movement, retreating into their own little worlds.
and women getting fed up with men and giving up on them altogether.
That kind of polarization could have huge consequences,
For society as a whole,
affecting everything from dating and marriage.
to family structures and even the workplace.
But couldn't it also lead to something better?
A more equitable future.
Maybe this disruption is what we need to finally dismantle the patriarchy,
It could be a wake-up call for men
forcing them to confront their role in upholding oppressive systems.
and encouraging them to become true allies.
It's like saying, hey, the old ways aren't working anymore. We need a new approach.
And let's not forget about the potential impact on women.
This movement could empower them to redefine their place in society.
To break free from those outdated expectations.
Imagine a world where women are truly free to make their own choices.
About their bodies, their careers, their relationships, their lives.
Without judgment or fear.
It's a powerful vision.
And whether or not the 4B movement takes us there.
It's definitely sparking some crucial conversations.
This whole deep dive has been so thought-provoking.
But as we wrap up,
I keep coming back to one question.
what does this all mean for the listener?
How does the 4B movement connect to your life?
To your beliefs about relationships and gender roles.
That's such a good question.
And the answer is different for everyone.
There's no right or wrong way to feel about this.
It's about engaging with the ideas.
Considering different perspectives.
And coming to your own conclusions.
Figuring out where you stand.
And what role you want to play in this conversation.
Challenging your own assumptions.
And being open to growth and change.
I think the biggest takeaway from all of this
is that this is a conversation that deserves our attention.
It's making us confront some uncomfortable truths.
About gender power and the foundations of our relationships.
And that discomfort is a good sign.
It means we're pushing boundaries.
Challenging the status quo.
So as you keep thinking about the 4B movement,
and everything we've discussed,
I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay, hit me with it.
Could this movement, regardless of its ultimate impact, be a catalyst for something bigger?
Yeah.
Could it lead to more open and honest conversations about gender equality?
About what we really want from our relationships. Definitely something to think about.
And that, my friend, concludes our deep dive into the 4B movement.
It's been a wild ride.
But hopefully you've come away with new insights, new questions.
And maybe even a few challenges to your own perspectives.
Keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep the conversation going. Okay, so here we are, part 3, final part of our deep dive into the 4B movement. And
it's been a lot to process, right?
Yeah, for sure. We've heard so many different opinions.
So many angles.
I guess the big question now is, where do we go from here?
Yeah, is this just a passing thing? Or is it going to have a real lasting impact?
Like, could it actually change the whole landscape of relationships?
It's tough to say for sure, but
I mean, it feels like something's shifting, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's not going to be a revolution overnight, but
I don't think we can just dismiss it as a fad either.
Even if it stays relatively small.
It's already got people talking.
About things that were kind of taboo before.
Like gender inequality, power imbalances.
These are conversations we need to be having.
So let's say for argument's sake that the 4B movement keeps growing.
It's even bigger than it is now.
What could happen? What are the potential consequences?
Well, one possibility is that it actually makes the divide between men and women even worse.
If enough women just opt out completely.
It could lead to more isolation, more resentment.
On both sides.
Men feeling like they're being attacked and demonized.
Retreating into their own little echo chambers.
And women becoming more and more disillusioned with men.
Basically giving up on them entirely.
And that kind of polarization could have huge consequences for society.
It could affect everything.
Dating, marriage, family structures, even the workplace.
Wow, that's a pretty bleak outlook.
Yeah, it's not a pretty picture.
But couldn't it also go the other way?
Could this be the push we need for real change?
Maybe this disruption is what'll finally break down the patriarchy.
Force men to confront their privilege and their complicity.
And inspire them to become true allies in the fight for equality.
Right. It could be a wake-up call.
Like shaking everyone up and saying, hey, the old ways aren't working anymore.
We need a new model for relationships.
And it's not just about men either.
This movement could be incredibly empowering for women.
Giving them the freedom to define their own roles in society.
To break free from all those old expectations that have been holding them back.
Imagine a world where women feel truly free to make their own choices.
About their bodies, their careers, their relationships, their whole lives.
Without judgment, without fear.
It's a beautiful vision.
And whether or not the 4B movement gets us there.
It's definitely starting the conversations that need to happen.
This whole deep dive has been so thought-provoking.
Really eye-opening.
As we wrap up, though,
I keep coming back to this one question.
What does all of this mean for you, the listener?
How does the 4B movement connect to your own life?
To your own beliefs about relationships, gender roles?
Yeah, what does it all mean for you personally?
Because there's no one right answer here.
No easy solution.
It's about taking all this information.
All these different perspectives.
And figuring out where you stand.
What you believe.
What role you want to play in this whole thing.
It's about challenging your own assumptions.
Being open to new ideas, even if they make you uncomfortable.
Because that's how we grow.
That's how we make progress.
And at the end of the day, I think the most important takeaway from this deep dive
Is that this conversation is important?
it's making us confront some uncomfortable truths.
About gender power and the very nature of relationships.
And that discomfort.
It means we're onto something.
It means we're pushing boundaries.
We're not afraid to ask the tough questions.
So, as you continue to process all of this,
I want to leave you with one final thought.
could this movement, even if it doesn't achieve all of its stated goals,
Be a catalyst for something even bigger.
could it lead to more open, honest conversations about gender equality?
About what we truly want and need from our relationships.
And with that, my friends, we come to the end of our deep dive into the 4B movement.
It's been a wild ride full of twists and turns.
We've heard from supporters, skeptics, opponents.
And everyone in between. But hopefully you've come away from this with something valuable.
New insights, new questions,
Maybe even a few challenges to your own perspectives.
and that's what it's all about, right?
Keep questioning, keep learning, keep growing.
The future of relationships might just depend on it.